Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of All Things Lean. My name is Madhulika Rajahan, mother, author, green energy enthusiast, and a certified Lean Six Sigma black belt expert. In today's episode, we will talk about bandwagon bias and how we can break the bias and get better results in a groupthink. So, before we embark on this journey, let's first understand what we mean when we say bandwagon bias. Bandwagon bias is a cognitive bias that is a hallmark of groupthink. When you believe something simply because it is a popular belief, then you are subjugating your thinking to bandwagon bias. Bandwagon bias occurs commonly because it saves you the time and effort that are required by otherwise thinking logically and research conclusions by yourself. It is much faster and easier to adopt others' opinions, especially if those popular beliefs are popular and consistently reoccurring. Designers must beware of bandwagon bias and remain logical instead of adopting popular opinions without ample thinking and consideration. If the majority of the team says this design is great, then you should only agree if you truly believe it and have facts to support such an opinion. Let's discuss the dangers of groupthink to understand bandwagon bias further. Groupthink is dangerous to our objectivity. It prevents us from thinking for ourselves and making the best decisions. Designers need to be cautious about falling into the bandwagon bias trap, but also be aware of how it can be exploited in their designs to improve user experience and get users to make the decisions the designers wants them to make. We human beings are social creatures, so the urge to belong and to conform is very strong within us. It helps us form relationships and bring meanings to our life. It also has a downside. It can make us conform to the wrong beliefs and take a wrong action because, well, everybody knows. For example, nowadays social media has an enormous effect on groupthink. The science fiction author Robert Heinlein had this to say about the urge. If everybody knows such and it ain't so, but at least 10,000 to 1, of course, that statement might be a little strong. Everybody knows that if you eat enough cyanide, you're going to die. But there's great element of truth in the idea too. Back in the 1950s, people believed smoking was good for you, and it wasn't. Today, many people believe that sugar is in diet is bad for you, but it's not until it is in excess, and so on. Bandwagon bias is a form of groupthink. It's a cognitive bias that makes us believe something because other people believe in it. It can make us think something that is achievable is impossible because others have tried and failed before us. It can make us think that there is only one way to tackle a problem because that's the way it's always been done. Tackling our own bandwagon bias is important because it frees us up to be creative and to think for ourselves. It allows us to race to meet challenges rather than falling at the first hurdle. However, on the flip side, we can also tap into the bandwagon bias in our designs. The most obvious way to do so is by use of social proof. This is why reviews and star ratings have become such an intrinsic part of online marketing. People are more likely to buy a product or service when they can see that many other people did so and were happy in that decision. Let's delve a little bit into the history of bandwagon bias. The term bandwagon in this context became popular in the mid 19th century as a form of derision in American political relationships. It was drawn from a chap called Dan Rice. Dan was a circus clown who performed across the USA. He was incredibly popular, and when he came to a place to promote his show, local folks would literally jump on the bandwagon to participate in his promotions. It was not like a politician to miss a trick when they got a wind of Dan's popular displays. They decide to emulate his work. They added music and bandwagons of their own to their campaigns to encourage their supporters to jump on the bandwagon. However, the public was as cynical about politics back then as it is today. And soon, jumping on the bandwagon was a phrase that held negative connotations. By the start of the 20th century, the phrase was used to mock the person who followed the herd without engaging their brain. So, how does it affect you? Like all cognitive biases, most of us suffer from the bandwagon bias at some point or the other. It might be simply expressed, for example, a preference for Apple computers because everybody knows they're the best computers for designers. This is, at best, a subjective judgment, and at worst, completely untrue. The reality is that the right tools for design is the one you can afford and one which does what you need it to do. Most modern PCs are as capable as Apple computers conducting design related work. Or it might be a little more complex when we say we do it like that is at XYZ company because my boss did it and like this before me and his boss did before him. None of that means that there isn't a better way of doing things, does it? It is difficult to recognize our biases, and the bandwagon bias is no different. We can start by asking ourselves why we believe what we believe and then probing the reasoning until we reach a strong understanding. Then we can ask, is that rational? If the answer is no, then we might take a bit of a soul searching to come to that, and then we must tackle the bias. It can be much easier to tackle biases through the use of a coach or someone that can work with us in a verbal sparring. They can help draw out your biases and ask the questions to help you examine them more clearly. So let's talk about bandwagon bias as a whole. The bandwagon bias is not always incorrect. However, when it is wrong, it limits our ability to carry out work effectively. It's worth challenging our biases and examining them in context so that we can make informed decisions and generate better work. Don't forget that user experience designers can tap into the bandwagon bias by social proof to improve the experience and customer journey of their products. Though don't overdo it. People are beginning to distrust social proof due to its overuse and unreliability in some cases. With this, we come to an end to this edition of All Things Lean. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment in our comment section on what you'd like to hear more. Until next time, this is your host, Madhulika Rajchauhan, signing off. Have a wonderful day ahead.